Hi, this is Atilla Yeşilada. It's past midnight in Istanbul, and I'm out of my coffin in search of fresh blood. It's 2 a.m., and I've been contemplating how I am going to cover the most important story in Turkish politics, namely that in most likelihood, we will have early elections before the end of 2025. It's complicated. First of all, if you're an American viewer, you probably don't understand the concept of early elections. You have elections every 2 years, and every 4 years you elect a new president. But if you are from Europe, from a country like UK or Germany, which are both on a parliamentary system, you would understand that sometimes the government, sometimes the opposition calls snap elections, elections scheduled before their legal date. In France, I don't know what the hell you're doing. You're in a semi-presidential system. I don't understand the French anyhow. In Turkey, the regularly held elections are scheduled for May 2028. And Mr. Erdogan is in the midst of an austerity program, which always hurts people and reduces the popularity of the administration. Why would he want early election? He doesn't. It is the main opposition party, CHP, that demands early elections. This is a complicated story because it involves a lot of moving parts, such as the judiciary attempt to ban Istanbul's popular CHP mayor, Mr. Ekrem İmamoğlu, from politics. Ekrem İmamoğlu is currently considered the most important rival to President Erdogan in the next presidential elections. Secondly, Mr. Erdogan's political condition. He's a lame duck. According to the Constitution, he is not allowed to run again. So in 2028, he will retire. But dictators don't retire. They are retired. Joking aside, he has signaled no intention to retire. He will probably run again. He wants to run again. But the Constitution forbids that. So he needs to get around it. Look, Turkey is the Ottoman Empire is the successor to Byzantine, an empire that prevailed for 800 years and is best known for plotting or scheming, among other things. We have adopted their worst habit. Turkish politics is about plotting and scheming all the time. So I'll lay this as straight as I can, and hope it makes sense to you. First, Erdogan wants to be reelected. Is there a way around the current constitutional ban for serving more than 2 terms? Yes. 2, when would he want early elections? 3, why does the main opposition party want elections in November 2025? And 4, why is that important? I mean, elections come and go. Could he lose? And as importantly, what will happen to Turkey's austerity program, belt-tightening program, if Mr. Erdogan were to concede to early elections by end 2025? Okay, let's start with Ekrem İmamoğlu ban. Ekrem İmamoğlu is the 2-time mayor of Istanbul. He defeated Erdogan's candidates a total of 3 times, and he is very popular. Currently, in popularity ratings, he's either #1 or #2. His main rival is not Erdogan in terms of approval ratings, but another CHP mayor, Mr. Mansur Yavaş, who governs Turkey's capital, Ankara. The third person in the popularity league is Mr. Özgür Özel, the leader of the main opposition party. Mr. Erdogan currently ranks 4th. So, obviously, Mr. Erdogan wants to get rid of Ekrem İmamoğlu. The judiciary, with the exception of the highest court, Turkey's constitutional court is completely under the sway of either AKP or its nationalist ally, MHP. So they found some bullshit crime for Ekrem İmamoğlu, defamation. Defaming who? The High Election Council members. Allegedly, he called them idiots. A, he didn't. B, so what? That's, freedom of speech. But anyhow, the court of first instance found him guilty and convicted him to 2.5 years in prison, as well as slapping a 5-year ban from holding any public office for 5 years. Now he is appealing. However, he has been tipped that the Intermediate Appeals Court has already signed off under his conviction. This is not official. I don't know where he got his information, but one would assume he needs to know, and he does know. If the Intermediate Appeals Court approves his sentence, he will appeal to the highest appeals court, Yargıtay, which is completely divided between AKP and MHP. I can confidently speculate that the highest appeals court would also let his conviction stand. Wait, the story doesn't end there. Then he has the right of appeal to the Constitutional Court, which will probably turn down the conviction, and that will be political chaos. Because in Turkey, unlike United States or any other modern country, it's voluntary to comply with the verdicts of the Constitutional Court. I'm not joking. Currently, a congressman, Can Atalay, is in prison, even though the Constitutional Court stated that he is innocent and he should be returned to his seat in the parliament. But as I've said, it's completely voluntary to comply with the verdicts of the Constitutional Court. Now, if Mr. Ekrem İmamoğlu is sidelined from politics, that would obviously antagonize the main opposition party, which would have no reason to cooperate with Mr. Erdogan for any topic on the agenda. Why is that important? As I've said, Mr. Erdogan is a lame duck. He can't run in the next presidential election. But there are 2 loopholes in our laws that will allow him to sidestep that ban. First is a new constitution, which automatically grants the sitting president another term, or an amendment to the constitution that will allow him to serve a 3rd term. The second venue is the parliament calling early elections. According to Turkish law, the president can abolish the parliament and take the country to early elections, but the constitution says if that's the way, then the president doesn't get another term. This is sort of like the crux of the argument and the most important thing to understand why Mr. Erdogan is in such a bind. He cannot fire the parliament and call early elections. That's not going to grant him a new term. The parliament must sit down and legislate an early election bill for him to get another term. The problem with both the constitutional method and the early election method is that both take 360 votes out of 600 members of the Turkish Congress. And AKP and MHP have roughly 325 seats. Roughly because, well, Turkish Congress people change parties very frequently, like I change my underwear. There's sort of like a transfer season or draft season when parties freely recruit from other parties to bolster their numbers or to get a foothold in a critical city where they have no political presence. So these numbers might change, but look at it this way. I mean, Erdogan and Bahçeli, the leader of the nationalist MHP, have to buy 35 Congress people to either legislate a constitution or early elections. That's tough to do even in Turkey. If you ask me why in the comments, I'll tell you, but let's get on with the story. So Mr. Erdogan has to cooperate with CHP, the main opposition party, either to change the constitution or to vote for early elections. CHP doesn't want a new constitution because it will only serve to increase the authoritarian tendencies of Erdogan and his sidekick Bahçeli. It's not going to be a liberal constitution. So, but they are willing to go to early elections. This is why it's important that Özgür Özel gave Mr. Erdogan an ultimatum. He said, look, if you want early elections, the only date I will agree to it is November 2025. If you come to me at any date after that and ask me to oblige to your call for early elections, I'll say no. Do you understand the situation? AKP plus CHP do have 360 votes. So within a day, they can call snap elections. And there is really no other feasible combination or permutation of parties in the parliament that can do the same thing. So Erdogan, in some ways, is compelled to play CHP's game. Currently, AKP and MHP are strategizing that Turkish opposition cannot refuse a call for early election, no matter what the date is. This is why opposition parties exist. They want to come to power. And of course, they always want early elections. But Mr. Özel has very good reasons to be serious in his ultimatum that CHP will not vote for early elections after November 2025. Not only the constituency of main opposition party CHP, but the voters of all opposition parties hate Erdogan. That's what, unites them. So if you were to tell his voters that, look, I know you're suffering, this government has completely screwed up the economy, poverty is growing by the day, unemployment is rampant, but if you can just, suffer 2 more years, you will get rid of Erdogan permanently. And I think that's a price worth paying. 2, remember, CHP's most likely candidate, Ekrem İmamoğlu, will have been banned from politics at that point. Then Mr. Özel has 2 excuses not to accept early elections after November 2025. The fact that, Erdogan just got rid of CHP's candidate who is most likely to beat Erdogan. Why would I help my opponent? So AKP and MHP are wrong in thinking that they can first fix the economy, then call early elections at any date. This is really very shallow thinking, not worthy of Mr. Erdogan, who is excellent at Byzantine plotting and scheming. So, of course, conditions can change. I will not rule out Erdogan being able to buy 30, 40 Congress people and call early elections at a date that he finds desirable or at a date that would maximize AKP's votes. But as I've said, this is not very likely. And we should, if you're interested in Turkey for business or financial reasons, make preparations for early elections in 2025, November 2025. These elections will be more important than any other because Turkey is currently employing or in the middle of an economic stabilization program, the dual objectives of which is to bring inflation down to single digits and to render current account deficits or external deficits sustainable, so small and easy to finance. Now, experience all across the world have shown us that such austerity programs don't deliver positive results within a year. In fact, the whole idea, the principle of an austerity program is that people must suffer simply because, with very few exceptions, to bring down inflation, you have to bring down economic growth. And lower economic growth means more unemployment, lower disposable incomes, or disposable incomes not growing. And the electorate will be very unhappy with that. In fact, they are. Since the 31st of March local elections, I have seen 15 polls, national surveys. In 14 of them, AKP was on average 4.5 points behind CHP. I have already mentioned that Erdogan is no longer the most popular leader in Turkey. He ranks fourth. So, unless miracles happens, and Turkey's economies are Mehmet Şimşek, pulls a rabbit out of the hat and rapidly brings down inflation and shrinks current account deficits further, Mr. Erdogan stands a very good chance of losing elections. How he is going to get out of that bind? If he accepts the proposal by CHP leader Özgür Özel to hold early elections in November 2025, what are his options? Well, there is only one option: to put the austerity program in the icebox and start spending again, pork barreling. And that's disaster for Turkish economy and for Turkish financial markets. Because pork barreling in the Turkish context means not only increasing budget spending, which is inflationary, but also lowering interest rates, because unlike Fed or the European Central Bank or Bank of England, Turkey's central bank is not independent. Its governor is essentially an employee of the president. If the president gives him a call asking him to lower interest rates, he'll say, yes, sir. This is the way Turkey works. And to stimulate the economy properly, I mean, that's something on which the economic theory agrees. It's always faster and easier to do it through monetary policy than fiscal policy. If you cut the interest rates, of course, given Turkey's high inflation, people switch their savings from the local currency, Turkish lira, to FX, to foreign currency holdings, which increases demand for foreign currency in a country which has external deficits. And that usually ends up in a currency crisis or balance of payments crisis. Or, assuming the central bank is able to defend Turkish lira, a big if, fiscal spending is going to accelerate inflation. Remember, at the end of the year, Turkish CPI is forecast to be around 45%. And on the way to the elections, you start spending more. That rate is going to rise to 60, 70, 80%. There are very few governments that manage to be re-elected when inflation is accelerating. Well, that's been an exciting story. Conclusion, I don't know. I have no idea how this is going to end, but I'm going to be laughing. This is my 34th year of covering Turkish politics and economy, and I have wasted all my earnings on psychiatrist bills, which stopped me from being suicidal or homicidal. A few more years, I hope, and I will be able to shoot myself and end this agony. In the meantime, I shall harass you with weekly videos. Thank you very much for watching Real Turkey channel and its humble presenter, Atilla Yeşilada. Hope to see you next week.